Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to our session of Into the Classroom, which is a student mental health awareness multimedia series produced by Mental Health California. I'm your host, Conrad Crump, also known as Coach Crump, and today's topic is learning to manage stress and pressure. Now, we know that in life, stress and pressure are inevitable, but they are also manageable. Now, today we'll talk with students about their experiences managing stress and pressure, and our clinical advisor will weigh in with strategies and solutions. Our goal today is to ensure that our youth have a happier and less stressful future. At this time, I'd like to introduce our clinician, Jamil Rodriguez, also known as GAMI, who is a marriage and family therapist and professional clinical counselor trainee at Wellness Together. His experience ranges from social work to law enforcement to the military. He's counseled numerous students and adults needing support for stress management, anger management, trauma, and substance abuse. Welcome, Gami, and I'd like to ask you, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well today. How about yourself?
Wonderful, wonderful. Doing great, doing great. All right, and at this time, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our youth guests. With us, we have Keyshawn Williams, who is a recent graduate of Sacramento State University. How you doing, Keyshawn?
How you doing, Coach? Good to be here again.
Good. Likewise, good to see you. And we also have with us Monica Tamayo from UCLA. Welcome, Monica.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Good to have you. So let's go ahead and try to get into it. Before we get into our discussion, though, I'd like to ask our clinician, Gami, if he could help us gain a better understanding of the topic and just provide us with some brief clinical insights on learning to manage stress and pressure, specifically as it relates to young folks.
Sure, that's not a problem. I guess the best thing to do is first ask yourself, what is actual stress management? Well, for one, we know what it's not. We know that it's not smoking. We know that it's not using alcohol. We know that's not using THC. We know that's not using any form of narcotics. Video games, definitely not helpful. Television, social media, internet, or just watching the news. That's not what it is. With stress management itself, stress is a secondary reaction. It's not a primary reaction. It's not just a reaction. It's a secondary. So that means something's causing it. And ask the question, what is causing it? For pressure, we're looking more at an exertion. So the actual definition is someone's exerting something on you. So who's exerting it? Who's exerting a form of pressure on you, whether it be social pressure, family pressure, or peer pressure? From in there, we have to look at how to handle it, manage it. So one, you understand, everyone's heard the whole deep breathing thing, right? Breathe in, exhale, hold it, and rinse, repeat. That works for some people. But it also works by doing that. It helps with the psychosomatic or parasympathetic nervous system. It helps calm you down. Another way to help out is just to smile. The action alone of smiling helps release the neuropeptides in your brain. So you just smiling alone helps release and makes you a happier individual and helps manage your stress levels. Another thing to do also is just get up and do something. You don't want to sit around. You don't want to just sit down and just do absolutely nothing. To help Do that. Get up, go for a walk, climb something, go for a jog, exercise, play a sport, right? For that nature, just get up and do something in yourself. For pressure, that's a little different. So it's not like stress. Pressure is a little bit different. So with stress, you can do something to help alleviate that. Pressure, what you want to do is you want to use another sense that we have. So everyone knows that we have 5 senses. We actually have one more sense, introspection. And that allows us to look into ourselves. What is our body telling us? Is our body excited? Is our body happy? Is our body frustrated? Is it angry? Does my stomach hurt? Am I hungry? But if we look at ourselves, we can sit there and go, what is my body telling me? Am I anxious? Am I nervous? Am I feeling pressured? Am I feeling bullied? Am I sensing some type of stress coming from it? Well, here's what you can do. It's easy. Make an excuse to remove yourself from the situation. That's it. That's all. That's one of the main things for pressure. Remove yourself, even to say you have to go to the bathroom. Just remove yourself from the situation. To figure out, give yourself time to understand what's happening to you. Another thing to do when you're in the conversation and you can't leave, because that does happen, you look at yourself and say, okay, what's happening to myself right now? Then what can I do? Well, what you can do is what's called a clarifying question. So who's ever giving you the stress, who's ever having that towards you, ask them, hey, is this your intent? Not being mean, hey, you're making me feel bad, you're making me feel upset, you make me feel stressed. Ask a clarifying question. Are you doing this to make me feel this way? Or are you doing this to make me have a feeling towards this? That gives you a long enough pause in a conversation to, one, find out where you're at, and then find out whoever you're causing the situation or the pressure, where they're at. That help?
Wow, very good. Yeah, no, that's super helpful. Thank you. I mean, that was like really helpful insight. And again, thank you, Gami. I really appreciate those comments. And now I want to turn it to some of our participants, some of our young folks. First and foremost, by a show of hands, how many of all of us here, how many get stressed or feel pressure from conditions that we find ourselves in from time to time? I know I certainly do. So my hand went up. So everyone, all of us here have had that experience. So I'd like to ask you, Monica, if you could talk with me a little bit about the stress and pressure that you have found yourself in, and maybe what some strategies that you might use when you're faced with those conditions.
Yes. So usually what I get stressed about is like upcoming assignments and tests, mostly deadlines. The way that I deal with that is I try to like put like a timeline on all of the work that I need to do, see what's prioritize, see what's more important, and then from there I'll see where I can do some like stress relieving activities such as going to the beach. My favorite is Santa Monica. I go there and I relax. So I'll do that. Sometimes I'll even hike. But yeah, those are the things that I found that have helped me deal with those stress factors.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks a lot for that, Monica. And I'll pivot to you, Keyshawn. How about yourself? You can kind of talk to us a little bit about what some of those pressures or some of that stress might look like, and some strategies that you use to cope with them.
For me, I would say I get stressed a lot from school, like Monica was saying, also from work. If you have a bunch of tasks to do at work, that I might end up feeling stressed that I have too much to do. I tend to put a lot on my plate. So for me, it's getting organized and maybe having a to-do list. So getting it out of my head so that I can put it somewhere that it's not just floating around, circling in my head. Oh, I have to do so many different things. I can look at it at a clear and tangible list. That's as far as organization and tackling it. But then as far as monitoring it, I really like to do meditation, kind of like Gami was saying, where you do some deep breathing and you do some introspection to figure out how you're feeling and then look to why you're feeling that way. And then you can tackle that to sort of end the stress. That's my main thing. Also, like Monica said, you might do stress relieving activities. So I might work out, I might make some art, I might write in my journal, I might hang out with my family. Um, all sorts of those, all types of those things will help me relieve my stress.
Got it. No, very, very good. Very good feedback. I appreciate that from both of y'all. So let's go ahead and go into our presentational slides that we have, because we want to get a little bit deeper into this topic. And looking at this slide right here, it just reminded me of what you were saying, Gammy. You said get up and do something. And I'm looking at this quote: life is not about waiting for the storm to pass, but learning to dance in the rain. I have often found that getting up, listening to music, and moving around can help me lift my mood, change my mood from some of the pressures and stress that I might be feeling. And that's just my personal tidbit. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. And I also wanted to touch on something you spoke about as well, Gammy, when you said introspection. So this slide here is all about that, right? Recognizing stress and pressure, having self-awareness. That, I feel, is a level of introspection. When you have that self-awareness and you can pay attention to those thoughts and those feelings, you're better off and you're in a better position to actually do something about them. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Yes. So looking at those differences, again, Gammy, that's what you were kind of talking about. Stress versus pressure, they're not the same thing. I want to kind of pivot to, you, Keyshawn, talking about, some of that pressure. I know that you said that you'll spend time with your family. You'll spend time doing other things like working out. But can you describe the pressure, what the pressure in and of itself actually feels like when you're having those feelings? Can you give us some descriptions of what that feels like?
It's kind of like a huge weight on your back, or kind of like a cloud that's following you everywhere you go, that is reminding your brain that, oh, I have to get this done, or I have something that I need to do. And it might be pressure. I've made music for a lot, and it might be, okay, I haven't been making enough music. I'm putting pressure on myself to get in the studio more and make more music. Or it might be with school, feeling the pressure of, hey, I'm spending a lot of money going to this university. I need to get good grades here. And so it might follow you around like a cloud, as I mentioned, and stay in your thought patterns and keep reminding you of this looming danger on the horizon.
No, I hear you. I feel that. Let's go ahead and go on to our next slide. Looking at student stress, and I know you, Monica, you talked about, both of you, talked about your experiences as students, and a little bit about the academic side of it. What about the peer relationships? Certainly that's got to be a source of stress. And, Monica, if you could elaborate, or, if you care to share some of your experience with some of the social dynamics and the stress that's associated.
Yeah, so it's actually I've had this like kind of like anxiety when it comes to building relationships, because I'm like, okay, if I socialize a little too much, I'm going to get invited to all these places, and then I'm going to feel bad if I say no. But then if I say yes, I feel like that's also going to stress me out more, because that's going to take away from like my study time, for example. I have had like friends from other, like that are in other universities, and they tell me that they're coming down for the weekend, and I actually feel pressured to have to go see them because they're visiting, when it shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't feel that like social pressure. And it's
Yeah.
not like they're doing it in a negative way, but it's just like all these things that are going on that's just like stacking on top of another.
Mm.
Those are some of like the social pressures that I feel like needing to go out when I feel like I need to stay in and study.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel you on that. I want to get our clinical advisor in here, Gammy. Any feedback or any thoughts on some of what we've just heard?
Oh, definitely. So everyone's talking about peer pressure or academic pressure for that, trying to get an assignment done and everything. So something here's funny. Does everyone know that selfishness can be a positive thing? So we have to look at that. So we have to be selfish for ourselves. Okay, so we're doing academics. So you have a deadline, you got to study. Well, let's just say you have an assignment due, right? And you're sitting there working on it and you're just like, okay, I got to get it done. I have a whole week to do it. What's stopping you from saying, okay, I can work 30 minutes and take a 15-minute break and then come back to it? Because then looking at it, your thoughts might change on your assignment. Giving yourself small incremental breaks here and there will help you. That'll help reduce your stress levels while you're doing your assignment. So giving yourself a break, coffee break, bio break, snack break, any kind of break, just give yourself a reason to give yourself a break. Stepping away from it will help you reduce that stress level in itself. Now for your peers, now we have peer pressure. Here's another fun thing about being selfish. Don't go. All right, someone's like, oh, I got my friends. Don't feel pressured. If they're your friends, they'll understand that you have higher priorities right now.
Right.
And the greatest thing about being selfish that a lot of people forget about, sleep. Be selfish with your sleep. That will greatly reduce your stress, and that will greatly reduce the pressure that you not only you put on yourself, but pressure from everything else around you.
That is great feedback. I really appreciate that, especially that sleep part. I think a lot of times as students, and myself included, it was almost kind of like I don't know, some type of a significant thing to be like, yeah, I pulled an all-nighter. I got this thing done, 20-page paper. I pulled an all-nighter. And it's like, yeah, but that's not healthy. You know what I mean? So those are some of the things to kind of definitely keep in mind. But as we move along, I also want to introduce one of our other youth participants. And at this point, we'll bring in Randy Rosemond, who is also a student at Texas Southern University. Randy, how are you?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing great. Oh, I'm doing great. I don't want to speak for everyone else. But yes, you caught us at a really great time, Randy, because we're talking about the pressures and the stressors that young folks go through. And some of our other young folks who are on the call right now talked about what they've been feeling, what they've been experiencing, and some strategies that they use to cope. Would you care to share some of the pressures or stresses, whether that be academic or whether that be relational, social, what have you? Feel free to just kind of chime in and tell us about some of the things you've been facing and what you do to kind of mitigate those challenges.
Of course, thank you. I think this is honestly like a very important topic because especially when you go away to college, you have family members, siblings, and friends at home that you may want to keep in touch with, but it gets hard when you're in college and you have to prioritize school. So I think that's a big pressure on me while I'm trying to balance my schoolwork and my classwork. I also have to remember my family back home and always like give my siblings a call or give my mom a call. So I think that's kind of hard to deal with sometimes. And especially when you have a lot of classes throughout the week, you go to school full time. It can be hard to balance all the schoolwork that comes with it. Because I've had tests throughout each class in my week. So that was like 3 days full of tests. So stuff like that can get a little stressful, but it's good to take the rest when you need.
That's very good. And that actually kind of segues into our next slide. If we can go on to our next slide, because, looking at some of those sources of, what we all kind of talked about with regard to the stress, the family expectations, the time management, right? Like all of these things are real challenges. And let's go ahead and go to our next slide. And with that, there are those impacts, right? The mood swings, the anxiety, the irritability, and these things can be emotional, physical, behavioral. Gammy, can you briefly just kind of talk to us about some of these impacts of this stress and pressure that we're seeing here, emotional, physical, behavioral type stuff?
Sure. So these types of things, the emotional, physical, and behavioral, these are all secondary reactions to your stressors and to your pressures. So as you're having them, you definitely have to understand what's causing them. What it's doing, Where is it coming from? How can I manage it, or how can I remove it? The bigger thing is that when we're talking about your emotional things, you're looking at an iceberg theory. So it's kind of a stackable situation where you have one cup. Okay, you're upset, you're frustrated. Then you add another cup, you're even more frustrated. Then you're getting to angry. And so it's just going to keep stacking up. And the more and more you do not address it, the worse it's going to get for you. And one, it's going to cause this leads into your physical things. One, you're not going to be able to think straight. You're not going to be able to react properly. You're not going to be able to study properly, right? The human mind only retains 50% of what it learns right off the bat. So the more stressed you're out, the lower that gets. And so the more and more you have to reread a paragraph, the more and more you have to rethink about it, the more and more you have to answer it to a different way for you to understand it. So you want to alleviate these stresses and these pressures. So I said, being selfish, you have to be selfish. Give yourself those little rewards, give yourself those little breaks, 30 minutes of work, 10, 15-minute break, and get right back to it. But be consistent. So it's easy to say, I'm just going to jump on a video game for 10 minutes and all of a sudden 3 hours go away. And you have to come back like, oh, wait a minute. Or I'm just going to check my social media for 5 minutes and then, no, do something simple. But make a larger reward for yourself in the end. Like if I get this done, I'm going to go to Wendy's or something.
I like that. Setting those small wins and setting yourself up for that. That sounds great. Okay, let's go ahead and look into our next slide that we have here. Looking at resilience and developing a growth mindset. Obviously resilience is something that we all have, and it's something that I feel like is a superpower, and it is something that can kind of help us in those times, in those tough times. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and keep going into the next slide and looking at setting boundaries. Now, this is something that we kind of touched on briefly a little bit earlier. Gammy kind of talked about it, saying, if they're your real friends, they're going to understand, you got to say no. And that sounds like setting boundaries to me. Keyshawn, could you maybe give us an example of a boundary that you might have set in your experience as a student?
Sure. Yeah. I would say everybody knows about finals week and everybody knows how rough that is. And a lot of us have friends that are not in college and who finals week is just another week to them. So you're still going to get invited to social events. You're still going to get asked to go out. And a lot of people might ask you things like, oh, well, does it really matter? Can't you like sneak away for a little bit? And that's a perfect example of a time you have to set boundaries and say like, I can't go out I can't go out tonight. I can't go out this week. I have studying to do. And that would alleviate pressure because it might add more stress to you to procrastinate a ton. And then all of a sudden the night before the test, you have to cram a bunch and then you're feeling more stressed out and then you do bad on the test and then you're stressed for the rest of the semester because you're making your grade up again. So that's an example where setting a boundary at that point would actually help you along the way and prevent you from experiencing stress.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's great feedback. I really like that. Let's go ahead and go on into our next slide. Planning and prioritization. So Monica, what are some ways in which you plan and prioritize to keep yourself on track?
Yeah, so at the beginning of like each quarter, I get all of the syllabi and I start planning out, listing all the assignments week by week. Big deadlines I put on my Google Calendar, so I'm always having reminders if I forget mentally. Like Keyshawn mentioned earlier, like it is very easy to forget things if you don't write it down. So I have like my phone alarms, my agenda so that I can have a visual. And I have a calendar that I keep on the side of my desk so that I'm always just looking to see what I have coming up next, to make sure that I don't fall behind. And also to make sure that I get things done on time, because when I don't get things done on time, that's when the stress starts to reel in.
Yeah, and that stress, it can weigh down on you. Speaking of which, let's segue into the next slide, because when we have stress, it is important to practice self-care and healthy habits. So I promised I was going to come back to you, Randy. So maybe you can share with us some healthy habits or ways in which you practice self-care.
Thanks so much. Honestly, I think trying new things and picking up new habits and hobbies are really good. I started to read more and I started to cook as well, picking up new recipes I could learn and kind of like pouring my time into something productive and fun at the same time that kind of like I like to learn about. Really makes my day better too. Like I realize I love reading. Like it's really enjoyable, and cooking is really fun as well. So learning new meals and just adding stuff like that. And I didn't do that before. I really lived on my own in college, so it's something new for me. But I'm very much enjoying it. It kind of adds a good balance to things when the work can get really stressful.
Wow, that sounds like some positive habits to me. Those are ways in which we practice self-care. And looking at our next slide of positive habits, that's just what we talked about, right? I believe, Randy talked about cooking, having that balanced diet. Gammy talked about getting enough sleep, which is important. I believe Keyshawn talked about working out, getting that exercise in. And I think another one I would add is getting to the beach, which is what Monica does to practice some self-care. So these are all great things, you all. Thank you all for your responses. Let's go ahead and go to our next slide. Seeking help when needed. Again, asking for help isn't always easy. Gammy, can you talk to us and maybe just give us some insight on why it's important to seek help and where some young folks might be able to find that help?
Sure. There's a lot of things that we do for seeking help. And the first thing that everyone goes to is the internet. So everyone goes to social media, internet, or start asking friends. It's great for advice, but they're not clinicians. They're not mental health specialists. They can get you to a certain point, but they can also hurt you more importantly. So mental health, that's something you really want to stress about. If you're having a problem, especially in your academics, you have a counselor. Seek your counselor. Your counselor is there to help you out. And what the counselor does is that there's various steps, counseling, therapy, and then psychiatrist. So the counselor always goes with, here's what you need to do. So they're going to help you out along the way. They're going to point you in a positive direction. Then if they get you to a therapist, and the therapist is going to go, okay, well, we know what you need to do, but why do you do what you do? And so we're going to start working on that development of seeking better help you understand who you are. It's not, the therapist isn't there to help you guide you through life. The therapist is there to help you figure out who you are. Now, the psychiatrist, a whole different story. So, okay, we know what you need to do. We know why you do it. This is for a little more extra medication. But seeking mental health, don't be ashamed of it. That's the main goal why people don't seek it. Is they're ashamed. There's nothing to be ashamed about. If you need help putting on your pants when you were a kid, your mom helped you, right? And as you got older, as you needed help with your car, your dad helped you. In that sense, in that manner, there's nothing wrong as being a teenager or young inside the college or university. A counselor's there to help you as well. And they'll help you seek that area that you need to help, calm yourself down, guide you, or give you a referral to work and help you even better.
Wow. Very good. Wise words. I appreciate that insight. I mean, that's super helpful. And, I want to ask, just do a quick round robin, maybe 10 to 15 seconds, not really long-winded, but I want to ask our youth participants what you might say to a young person leaving high school, going into college, when it comes to how to manage their stress and how to manage the pressure that they're going to be facing.
Yeah, I tell them to not be afraid to ask for help. They have their immediate family for support. I know not everyone has family that has gone to college in the past. Some are first generation college students. So it may be a little bit more difficult to go up to them, but there's always your teachers. They've been through it. There's a lot of help offered at the schools, counselors, like you've mentioned. So just overall, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Wonderful. And Keyshawn, go ahead and take us home.
I would tell them that you have what it takes. I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help as well. And I would say not to get into your head too much about it. Write your feelings down and meditate and breathe. And I would just say you have what it takes. You can get it done.
Wow. Well, with that, I want to thank each and every one of you just for taking the time with us today. Thank you, Keyshawn, for your words. Thank you, Monica, for your words. And as well as you, Randy, just for being here and giving some insight to our youth. Also, thank you, Gammy. Really appreciate those words of wisdom. And thank you to our audience for joining Into the Classroom, which is a production of Mental Health California. Please be sure to visit us at mentalhealthca.org. And to access health and mental wellness topics for boys and men of color, please visit our signature initiative at brotherbewell.com and be sure to subscribe to our blog. And again, thank you to our sponsor as well, Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative, which promotes access to mental health support. You can learn all about their program at bluesky.blueshieldca.com. I'm your host, Conrad Coach Crump. Until next time, you all have a good one. Take care.